foundation originally started working in global health. And the idea was that you could, through innovation in technology and product development and delivery, you could actually help a lot of people live healthy lives. But somewhere along the line, the leadership of the foundation realized that, well, if you get people healthy and you cannot get them out of poverty, the very factors that cause them to get sick will actually send them back. And so the foundation started working on other areas, including global development. Specifically, I'm going to talk about livestock. The idea of our agricultural development program is that we could increase using technology and delivery of inputs and helping farmers sell some of what they produce. We could increase productivity, and that could be a pathway out of poverty for millions and millions of farmers in the world. 15, 20 years ago, my parents were one of those people that the foundation is trying to help. I specifically want to spend a little bit of time actually talking to you about livestock and the role of livestock in the lives of poor people. In just South Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa alone, there are about 930 million people who depend on livestock. And of those people, at least 60% of them, it depends on the community, but at least 60% of them are actually below the $1 a day number that I showed you on the slide, or $1.25 if you like. They are in extreme poverty and highly vulnerable. And what we're doing is trying to identify opportunities to help these people, because they depend on livestock, to help these people get more out of the animals that they own. I don't want to spend too much time on this slide except to tell you that even today, a lot of the food that is produced around the world actually come from poor smallholder systems. Aggregated across, it's a lot of food, but on an individual basis, most of those farmers are struggling to make ends meet, and they are trapped in a system that does not allow them to get out of poverty. And for most poor farmers, livestock is actually the most important asset they have. If they lose an animal due to disease, or if the cow fails to get pregnant and they cannot get the milk out the following lactation, then everything just completely goes haywire, if you like. And so sort of optimizing opportunities for them to be able to get more out of their animals is absolutely critical. Livestock also contributes significantly to the incomes of most poor people. And in a lot of cases, livestock owners people who own livestock and are poor typically have a little more resiliency because of the ability to smoothen their income across the year. And sometimes the difference between a child, like I said, being in school or not in school is the ability of a mother to sell a chicken. In our livestock program, we focus on some of the historically difficult and challenging problems. One of the most important one is obviously genetics. And a lot of people, when you say, well, the foundation works on genetics, they say, why? Because you cannot really do philanthropy. But the idea is that there's a poor farmer who knows how to, for example, produce milk. But they have a cow that, and I'm going to tell you more about it, they have a cow that doesn't produce a lot. Can you figure out a way to give the farmer a cow that produces enough, but it's not a Holstein? So it doesn't just wither and die. Most people will tell you that genetics is the biggest opportunity for smallholder livestock productivity. But once they get the right genetics, nutrition is actually the most important factor, because that's what will get them to where they need to be. And then, of course, we spend a lot of time on entrepreneurial development, empowering women to be able to become leaders and be able to make their own decisions in some of the things that they're trying to do. I'm going to spend the rest of my time actually talking about genetics, because that's what I actually know better. Our genetics program is targeted at helping poor farmers get access to the right animals for the production system that they have in that agroecology. We focus on two specific areas. First one is increasing potential productivity, and we do this by looking for strategies to increase genetic gain. For the longest time, there's been opportunities in developing countries to start breeding programs, but a lot of those have failed. And there are many reasons why they fail. But today, if you look at Africa, the Africa that we knew 20 years ago is not the same Africa, because most of the people have cell phones. The communication technology and the ability to actually get information out of farmers or to reach farmers has completely changed. And that opens a lot of opportunities for us to be able to do things that we were not able to do in the past. We also focus on what we call realized productivity, and that basically simply means helping farmers get access to the right animal for their production system. So the optimum genotype of an animal depends on the environment. If you go to a typical sedentary smallholder system, for example, in Africa, you can characterize the production environment as poor. Poor means that in the rainy season, for example, they have a lot of feed, they have a lot of water, they have everything they need, but in the dry season, everything dries up, there is nothing, and the animal barely has to get by. And in those situations, even if you bring a Holstein, maybe it will survive, and maybe you produce, but it's not going to be as productive as a good crossbred animal with the right breed composition. But then, of course, as the systems improve and the farmer actually learns how to manage the animal better, you can begin to, in places like Kenya, where the temperature tends to be a little lower, you would tend to see a lot of really good, even purebred animals producing 3,000-4,000 liters of milk, if you like. So the idea of realized productivity, for example, in dairy, is to basically, it's crossbreeding. But then the question is, what crossbred? Is it a 75%? Is it a 50%? Is it a 25%? And what we've done is we invest in programs that look at genomics and looks at the breed composition of the animals that the farmers currently have across multiple ecologies, and look at the production systems they use and try to determine which production systems for what crossbred genotype gives the most production in what environment. And if you could do that, then you could actually work with companies that are supplying heifers, for example, to these farmers to target the right genotype to the right environment. The graph on this side basically shows that the local animals typically would produce about 400 liters per lactation. If you can get a crossbred animal out of that local cow, typically, without changing the feeding system, you can actually get about 1,600 kilograms. And this is based on actual data that we've collected from farmers, having farmers report data on cell phones, and then once a month actually go in there to validate that the data they're sending is actually accurate. And typically, if you can feed that cow really well, in the rainy season, most of those cows actually produce between 10 to 15 liters per day. But in the dry season, then they drop down to about 3 or 4 liters per day. So overall, it averages out being about 1,500 kilograms per lactation. The idea is if you can actually work with the farmers to help them report information on their animals, you could actually begin to help move the productivity curve, if you like. So the idea is that you could help the farmers optimize productivity. If they have 4 cows and they find out that actually it turns out that only 2 of them are giving them milk, then potentially they can actually remove 1 or 2 of the unproductive animals and try to replace it with the more productive heifer. I want to spend a little bit of time towards the end and talk about poultry, because I like poultry. Today, typically after independence in most African countries, of course there were not a lot of people, but there was a lot of productivity at the time, and there were a lot of commercial poultry production systems that was able to supply a lot of poultry meat and eggs into the communities. But today, if you look across Africa and Middle East, 40% or more of the poultry product importations actually go to Africa. That says, and that only meets a fraction of the demand in the respective countries. That says that there is a lot of opportunity for productivity growth if you can figure out a way for the farmers to increase productivity. Excuse me. The challenge is, in Africa, there's not enough grain. So you cannot actually take a layer that you could raise here that produces 300 eggs over a cycle to a farmer and say, here, this is a very good, high productive bird, because they cannot feed it, and most likely it would die. As you can see from this slide, if you look across the world, production of poultry or competitiveness to produce poultry depends on your ability to produce grain. I want to spend a few minutes and talk to you about advanced genomics stuff. So the same traits or similar traits that we care about here, milk yield, productive life, age at first calving, are also economically relevant in Africa. The idea is, historically, it's been very difficult to work on these traits because the farmers are remote, they are inaccessible, you can't get any data out of them. About 3 years ago, one of the program officers that was at the foundation started a program with ILRI, where ILRI has, an International Livestock Research Institute, has developed these systems where you can actually give a cell phone to a farmer, and we wake up in the morning, and not only are you able to get the GPS coordinate of where the farmer is located, but you're also able to have the farmer actually in the morning text everything that happens to the cow. They would text, and it's amazing how people that we would assume are not literate, the amount of information they can actually send. And once a month, we can send some young scientist or young person in a community to the farm before the farmer actually milks the animal. And so you can actually validate the data and know that the data they've been sending that week is actually correct. And the idea is, historically, when we've collected data, we've never given anything back to the farmers, so they stop. But today, because you have cell phones, you can actually, in real time, plot the lactation curve of these animals and look at what is happening. John, it's like the grow-safe system, right? You can actually monitor what is happening to the animal, and if there's going to be a problem, you can quickly send a text message to the farmer, but you can also quickly send a text message to the extension officer in that area, and the extension officer actually contacts the farmer and helps them figure out what to do with that. And because of that, the farmers actually get engaged, and practically what you have is the Canadian Dairy Network system that we have here, basically, implemented in Africa, without the farmer actually ever stepping foot in Nairobi, basically. Because they get information, they send information, and they get information. And the idea is, when the scientists go to the farm, they collect samples on those animals, and they collect blood samples, tissue samples, everything that you can collect, and we can start analyzing and basically trying to determine what is going on with the farmers' animals and helping them optimize the productivity. I'll stop here and thank you.